Hello, today I'm interviewing Dave Burtonshaw, who's a guitarist and a teacher. Hi Dave.
Hi Vic.
Um, and yeah, normally when I start interviewing people, I sort of get a little bit of their background and take it from there because it gives me a really clear picture for me personally. I don't know how it is for people listening, but where you're coming from and how it forms your thoughts, and decision making. So tell me a little bit about your past then, Dave. How did you start getting involved in music?
Music started probably when I was about 11 or 12 at secondary school, so the old style second year. And all my friends seemed to be into punk and buying Enemy and buying singles, those of you who can remember it. And it started there really, and then a few people started bands around the same sort of time, and then I ended up in a band and we started playing punk. We invented garage music. Garage music wasn't what you think in the 90s.
Right.
Garage music goes back to the 70s when we used to have two or three bands at school. People's parents would go on holiday, so we'd open up their garage and do an impromptu gig until the police would come and close it down, and then we'd move off, do it somewhere else. So we used to talk about having garage gigs, but it was totally different from what the media thinks it is.
Yeah. So where were you living at that time?
I was living with my parents at home back then.
Where?
In Bromley.
In Bromley.
Yeah.
Okay.
Far from here.
Because interestingly, in the 70s, there was actually a Medway sort of musical style called garage, which of course has got nothing to do with what we think of as the sort of garage that now is a sort of popularised thing. So that was a punk sort of like punk meets new wave type thing.
Yeah.
So that was obviously something that was going on, and it actually fits that sort of thing, doesn't it? A bit like the sort of new, I don't know what you would call it, the sort of like new punk stuff of bands, the sort of grunge thing, if you like.
Yeah.
Because that sort of came about again, didn't it? Did you do any recordings like that?
Only on cassette tape, nothing. We were 12 or 13 at the time, so it's just local stuff. But also, back in those days, recording the tape was how you actually learned to play the guitar.
Yeah, it was.
You'd record a song, you get your guitar, play it back, and just learn how to play it by copying what was.
Because you used to do that as multi-tracking, or I certainly did for songwriting.
Yes, yeah.
You sort of bounce cassettes. You play an idea on one, and then you play it, and then play the next part as you recorded it onto another cassette player, and then you would reverse that and do the add to it. But it was a good way of getting ideas down. So that's really interesting. Because do you think that influenced how you got involved with music later? That sort of get yourself dirty, playing music, rough and ready. Because I think those early sort of things of just doing it, getting a bunch of people together in a garage and playing, influences how people then carry on learning.
I think so. I think it was an evolution because friends were doing it, so I didn't want to miss out. So I get involved, and as you were saying with Barry, when you recorded with Barry, how you suddenly find, hold on, actually I can play that a bit better than they can, and then from punk, you find punk.
Yeah.
No disrespect to artists that do punk, but after a while you think you've got it pretty much covered, the sound and everything. So you want where's the next step? Yeah. So it sort of moved on to heavy metal, and then it evolves in whatever direction it seems to take you. But definitely being in a band earlier, thinking about it, I hadn't thought about it before, but I think that definitely forms ideas in your head and gives you a direction.
Yeah, because there was something really fascinating about this, because I get a lot of my ideas from things other than music. So, in fact, lots of my ideas come from other things that you sort of look at and think, well, they're sort of sharing the same space. And one of the areas for like when I was sort of doing a lot of work for people, helping them to develop businesses within music, was to see what people who were doing like complementary medicine type of thing, like massage and all that sort of stuff, how they dealt with things, because again, they're very similar. They're doing a lot of very similar things. For instance, They're dealing with people that have got money to spare. There is a demand for what they're doing because somebody doesn't feel very well necessarily. But so if you compare that to, like, for instance, teaching guitar, you're still dealing with people who've got something money to spare, right? And the desire is that they always wanted to do, play the guitar or whatever it was, and that's their sort of ache, if you like, or their itch that they're trying to sort out. And so I often sort of look at things from a sort of at a tangent. And what interests me about this is that when you've got that recurring theme that happens every so many years, where, like, if you think 1960s, and I mentioned this in I think it was Barry's interview actually, when you got people who started, the pop music in that period of time. And of course, basically it was simple. Not all of it, but most of it was simple. You could do 3 chords, and you got the beginning of, and you're off. You could join a band or whatever type of thing. And of course that happened again with punk. You didn't have to have a great repertoire of anything to get started. And of course that is a different mindset from what's happening now, where you've got lots of people, they come and have lessons for years and years and years, and they don't do anything with anybody else. It's almost like they've got to, in their mind, have got to get to a certain level before they're allowed to do that thing. That's what I was saying to you about, do you think that when you're starting off, and you're playing in a garage sort of thing, is all your mates and turn up, you make a god-awful row, whatever, but you have good fun, and your mates turn up, it's like, well, they have good fun as well, and then it naturally just becomes something. Instead of, no, you've got to learn this, you've got to do this grade, you've got to do that, blah blah blah, and you've got to have this gear, and then, and I think it changes that, because I think that is something we have that's fundamentally wrong. And why I drew that analogy is that actually happens, believe it or not, with how people learnt. Well, I'll take this as an example: herbal medicine or massage. In the past, you would have done it because you did it. That's what you did, and gradually you did, and you probably worked with somebody as an apprentice, blah blah blah, to learn the skill, and that's what you did. Now people go to college, and interestingly, and I always find this fascinating, those people who do their whatever it is, herbal medicine thing, often don't actually go out and find the herbs. It's all from a book in a classroom, so they don't actually go and find anything. And the massage thing, the first time I heard this, I was amazed that people don't actually touch anybody for about the first 2 years. And you think, that's like sort of, but again, this is the comparison I'm making with music, that instead of you getting together with a bunch of people and you go like, what's that? Oh, it's D. How did you play D? It's other thing. I mean, I've got to get from D to G. And you try doing that in a band. Right? Literally, like, from the word go, you're playing in a band, even though you can barely play. And I think that's something where, because I know that you're involved in teaching, I find really interesting as a big marker difference. But anyway, so.
But getting back to the thing about 60s music and then punk music and then the grunge, also with sequences and dance music, the younger people today, they've been able to, people with no music experience, suddenly they're able to make tunes. But as you say, that is a solitary thing. Yes. They can do in a computer. But it's also a revolution.
Yes.
Where people with no music experience, within a short amount of time, are actually making something musical.
Yes, and I think actually that is a really powerful thing, because obviously we tend to look at stuff like that and go, oh God, that's not an instrument. But there are lots of those sort of characters who actually do play musical instruments that actually, because there's a couple of DJs that I know, one of them was a really good drummer, and but he's a top DJ. But again, how are you going to know about beats unless you can play?
Yeah, I mean, to be a top DJ, you need to know your drums. You need to. That is a massive part of it.
Definitely. But I think the route in can be different now. But as you say, it's that there's a sort of an interaction, and just getting on and doing it is the thing that I'm sort of saying. It's that to be creative, you have to be creative.
Yeah, yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes, I
You know,
understand that.
and playing in a band or playing a musical instrument, you've got to play. You've got to just get out and play, not just sit practicing your scales or whatever. So what happens after that? You know, what was your next thing? Would you say? Did you said that you did the punk thing and then you got involved in other things. So what were they?
Then I got involved in a sort of rock music, sort of heavy metal, and then you start to think of guitarists you like, talking about the music side of it. Dave Gilmour just sort of hit me between the eyes, and then later Steve Lukather, who I think is a very, I mean, obviously a lot of people know about him, but a lot of people don't know about him.
Well, it's funny actually because I've been listening to Toto 4.
Yeah. Actually,
this week.
That was a key album for me. I remember a friend had a yellow Volkswagen Golf, and he had an older brother who had a Toto 4 cassette left in the deck, and that was a key album for me, and that changed my outlook on music. It was, everyone can say they've got not everyone, but a lot of people can say there's a defining album they listened to at some point, and it changed their perspective on music, and you could say their perspective on life.
Yeah, because what's interesting.
Toto 4 was one.
Yeah, because that's such a strange album, because it kicks off with Rosanna, doesn't it? And and of course you get to the end of that track and you think, oh my God, you know, this is the jam bit at the end with that guitar solo, and you go, my God, that's just unbelievable. And then the next few tracks, it's all very sort of tight, and you know that guitar solo is a real, you know, studio guitar solo for that song, blah blah blah. And you know, it's amazing that there are little glimpses of that, like what these guys could do. And of course, obviously, Rosanna starts off with that ridiculous drum pattern, doesn't it? That amazing sort of shuffle pattern that
Jeff Porcaro.
Yeah, Jeff Porcaro plays.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just class stuff. You know.
Yeah, and saying how that album changed my perspective on music and life. One thing that came out of the life thing was I've got 4 daughters. By the time you get to the 4th daughter, you're running out of names.
Yes.
So my 4th daughter's called Rosanna.
Well, there we go. So that's it.
Because like she was small and perfectly formed, just like Steve Lukather's solo from Rosanna.
Yeah,
it's a perfect.
You probably didn't tell your wife that at the time, did you? Because that probably. But it actually makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So, what sort of other sort of band work did you do that you sort of think, well, that was sort of definitive? That.
Well, from school, I got into fundamental Christianity in a big way. My views have sort of changed a bit since then, but that was a massive influence in my life. And I became part of a Christian rock band called Aslan. They had quite a following around the country.
Yeah.
So I spent a good 2 or 3 years doing that, and that was a good band.
Yeah, because I think
learn my trade really.
Yeah, because it's interesting because we haven't got that, you know, gospel music tradition here, and actually, I think the Christian thing is quite an important component for a lot of people that fills that gap. Because I was interviewing Paul West. And he, you know, straight up, that was, you know, he attributed everything that he did to his involvement in the church, and he's, you know, an all-round musician, drummer, you know, engineer, singer, guitarist, bass player, and you think, well, because it's one of those things where you have to learn the trade, you have to be able to knock out the songs, you know, and you've got to do that gig, and you've got to be on it, haven't you? You can't be like, because it's like you've got some reason, like you know, there's a higher perspective of that, and this is true with gospel music, you know, and you just learn what you have to do, and we haven't got a lot of those opportunities, have we? So it's an interesting thing.
Except the music was gospel music in terms of it was preaching the gospel, but it was based really on Rush, William, Genesis. So So and at the time, there was a big difference in Christian music. Christian music's evolved a lot since then.
Yeah.
But at the time, there's a big difference between church music and, for want of a different word, secular music.
Yeah.
So it's like bridging a divide and trying to cross the boundary there.
Yeah.
So we pride ourselves on producing high quality, excellent music, but with a message as well.
Yeah. Because I used to, one of the bands that I was in for a long time, two of the guys from the band used to work with Noel Richards.
Yes, I know.
And you know they play Wembley and they play Berlin, and it's like, you know, I mean, amazing, mind-boggling level, and the musicianship was astonishing, you know, because they could just do whatever was required, you know. So yeah, interesting. I find that it's an interesting, important aspect, I think, from the, you know, how people develop their musical skills.
And the Christian music side was interesting because church I went to, it was quite a big high-profile church. On Sunday nights you'd have 2,000 people there. So you'd have like passing singers, guitar players, musicians that were known worldwide, who would come, and you'll be the backing band. So you've got a lot of exposure to some high quality musicians and leaders. And it was fantastic for training.
So when did you sort of leave that?
I left that probably about around the year 2000, I think.
Right.
Around the year 2000,
You see, that must have been quite difficult for you from that, because you were having to let go of the music, I suppose, unless you had some other outlet for the music.
Yeah, it's around the time when my daughters were being born and that, and bills to pay, and the band was doing well. We had a bass player left, Kevin Frost, who joined Culture Club. He's been there for the last 25 years. Co-wrote Taboo with Boy George, and that sort of that, and a couple of other things, and other people thinking it's the end of the life, and families coming along, and kids thinking actually need to devote more time to the family. So that's why that came to an end at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a good time.
It's interesting. Yeah, fascinating. So what did you do after that, apart from
I'd
go off and do something else?
Yeah, I mean, I was constantly teaching through that time and playing here and there, but nothing particularly serious. And spent my time ended up head of IT for a law firm for 20 years in London, which is great coming out the other side of it, because you know, you learn in a high pressure environment with lots of demands from people. You need to be organised, you need to be efficient, you need customer service skills, and all those skills serve well when you come out the other side to become like a full-time musician again.
Interesting, isn't it? Because again, that's another one that's a bit of a thorny subject for a lot of musicians. That, you know, customer service. You know, because again, if you think about whatever it is that you're doing, people got to like what you do. If you're doing that sort of stuff, so for instance, you know, if you're doing the function band thing, you can't be the prima donna, can you?
No, you're paid to provide a service, aren't you?
So, you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that's quite difficult for a lot of musicians. It's getting the business bit sorted.
Yeah.
So what would you say with what you're doing now with your teaching? How is that different from what you would have done before, with all the experience that you've got?
Well, I think the teaching is part, because I wanted to develop as a full-time musician, and teaching is a great way to provide a stable, regular income.
Yeah.
So I've been focusing on doing that, and that has, with help of others, yourself included, has gone incredibly well. So looking at other projects and how to get the balance and that, but the important thing is to establish a regular income, because for the whole thing to work, you need income. Otherwise, you've got a problem.
Yes.
Hence the customer services as well, because you're providing a service for your customers.
Yeah.
And they need to be satisfied, otherwise they won't buy your services.
Well, the thing is, I've always said, you know when something's right by people keep coming back and giving you money. You know, in a nutshell. Because if they don't, I mean, it's obviously life gets in the way. I'm not saying that, you know, you keep everybody, because you don't, because that's not how things work. But it's that sort of idea that if you end up, I did a book a few years ago about the things that you learn from music that you could apply to business. So it's like sort of like the reverse of what we're talking about, actually, because you're saying about things about business that you can apply to music, because it works both ways, obviously. But it was this it's this idea that you know, if you come up with an idea and you have a big turnover of people in a business situation, you'd think there's something wrong. You'd immediately go, we're not getting the return of business. You know, as soon as people keep coming back, you're doing something right.
Yes.
And it's a very simple principle, but that's one of those things that music teachers don't sort of get, because they think, well, this is the right way to do it, which is actually some sort of habit or prejudice about something that they're right and everybody else is wrong. It sounds a bit unfair, but I am being unfair, because I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I'm not saying not everybody does it. I'm not saying a lot of people do it, but I've seen it happen. And you get comments when you get these interactions between musicians on certain social media groups and stuff like that, when you know that somebody has got that attitude and they can't work out why people don't keep coming back.
Yeah.
Or why is it that such and such happens, and you sort of go, well, actually the answer's, well, the point is actually deeper than that.
Yes.
So when you're saying, customer service, which I like that, because it takes it out of the ballpark of music. Because it comes back to that sort of thing, well, why is somebody coming to you? And why would they do that? Why would they part with their money? And of course it's not about the guitar, is it? And I mentioned this to Barry, because this is, we had this discussion. But this is one of the points when it occurs to you, not occurred to me anyway, you go, oh yeah, gosh, smack on the head type moment, you sort of go, yep, of course they're doing that because there's something else that's much more desirable that sits behind something.
Yeah.
And I think that actually is interesting, because that sort of ties in with what you were saying about your involvement in the church and the fact that this band became obviously really good to be doing, touring all around and stuff, and playing big venues and all the rest of it. The desire that motivates that isn't necessarily what you go, it's the music. There's something else. And you see it within early bands like the Rolling Stones. That's what they did. They had to play. Yeah. It's not because they were going to get this or get that or whatever. No, it's about their desire to play. And it was music.
Yeah.
Right? It was the thing about the music that they were listening to that made it, they had to play. And that sounds a bit strange looking at it now, because we're sort of, which is why this thing earlier when I was saying this, almost a detachment from, no, we're all going to get round to the garage and play, because we have to. It's like, why would you do anything else?
Yes,
yeah. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And I think that's a really important point that you sort of, that you sort of brought up in a way, that it's about that. So when you get into the sort of thing about the teaching, and you're saying that now, because what makes the teaching function well is the way you've got it structured now.
Not just the structure, but it's also, I know you believe in the same method. If you find out where the student is,
yes,
where their aspirations are,
yes,
and you use their aspirations,
yes,
and teach them what they need to know,
yes,
along the way. So they're motivated because they've got their goals they want to achieve,
yes,
and use that as a vehicle so that they can learn the bits they need to learn for the grade or to develop as a musician.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit like the concept within business, like, is there a problem? Can I fix it? If I can, I've got a business. That type of thing,
yes,
which is not coming out of, I'd really like to do so and so. Let me train to do that, and then when you get there, it's like, does anybody want to come and see me?
Yes,
which is not the same thing, because it's the concept of the what is it about a restaurant? So again, back to that thing I was saying about this book that I wrote. A lot of those concepts are to do with, you know, what is it that makes people come and see a band? You know, well, what is it about the band that makes people desperate to come and see them? And that's a difficult question to answer.
It's a complex question.
It is.
Complex answers.
Until when you sort of go back to, like you're saying about punk, there's a damn good reason for people to want to come and see a punk band. And then and it's not the music. Well, that sounds unfair because it is the music. But what I'm getting at, it's not about the complexity of the music or anything like that. And that's true with the blues, and it's true with all sorts of stuff. You know, It's not about how many chords there are, how whatever. It's about the sheer energy that makes that work.
Yeah.
Or there is something.
It's the energy and the experience.
Yeah, I think we could put a lot of labels on what this thing is, but it's slightly unknowable. It's slightly mysterious, right? It's a bit of a mystery. We could leave it parked like that, I think, because I think that is something that you look at and you go, you know, explain Oasis to me. How did that happen? Or explain the Beatles. And you go, and people go, oh yeah, well they were, you know, something in their time, blah 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 blah. No, it's that mystery that goes like, it's them. It's them. They are doing something which you do not understand, and it's like moths to a flame. Yeah, and I think that's the bit we sort of. I don't know if you know your take on that. So, you know, you're saying when people come for a lesson, it's a little bit like they've got a question. They've got something in their head that's driving them to make the decision to come.
Yeah.
We don't know what that is. We can sort of go, you know, and this is what we sort of think, what is it you want to do with that type of thing? And that sort of gets you a doorway in somewhere. And then that is their motivator.
Mm-hmm.
But it probably is even deeper than that. I don't know. I'm just sort of, I'm playing with it at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But I know that you feel the same about it.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
To what, you know, to that point. Because once you sort of see it, you can't miss it. You can't stop seeing it, can you? That's the point about these things. It takes you ages to see it, and then suddenly it's like, oh God.
Yes, yeah.
It's there everywhere,
Yeah.
you know. That's what makes, you know, all of this stuff tick. Some sort of, you know, addiction to something, whatever that is, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the problem or the itch that needs to be scratched.
Yeah, yeah.
Thing, you know. So, are you doing much playing at the moment?
No, very little. But what I'm, the teaching has just gone through the roof. I've got, you know, all my hours are filled with teaching at the moment, which is great. So, but I'll see where that develops. You know, what happens over the next year or so. Ultimately, I enjoy making music. I enjoy making music that brings joy to people.
Yeah.
And lift people up. If you can sort of bring people to a better place than they are, then yeah, that's a good thing.
Well, we need a lot of that.
Yeah.
At the moment.
But I'm looking at things like I've been doing a little bit of DJing, but not in the terms of being a human jukebox. In terms of, you know, the technology these days, you can take tracks, just get one track to go smoothly into the other. You can change keys, you can change timings, you can do all kinds of things to clearly. So you end up with like one track that's an hour long, but it's just songs interwoven into each other.
Okay.
So that's quite a beautiful thing that I've been looking at the moment. But also writing music for TV and films. That's something I'm
working
spending
on
some time working on
yeah.
at the moment. But also some background I've got which is helps me to prepare for that was my dad was a sound engineer and studio manager for the BBC.
Oh right.
From the late 50s up until the mid 90s.
Yeah.
I used to go to work with him. So
right, that's
so
interesting.
So it's quite incredible. So he saw the Soho jazz explosion. So in daytime, the musicians who are household greats now will be doing their sessions at the BBC. At night, they'll be making a name for themselves in the West End. But also experiences like my dad used to record at the Royal Albert Hall. He's got a full orchestra. They spend 4 hours miking everything up, record the concerts. Next day, 2 hours mixing it down, recording it, and it come out on vinyl. So 6 hours work,
Yeah.
and you've got a record at the end of it, and
Oh,
that's an
yeah.
incredible
Now
life.
that
Yeah.
actually is very. This takes us back actually to your first comment about garage,
Okay.
because what I nearly said, and I think it's relevant now actually what you said. The Medway garage thing was that they recorded in an open space, the whole band, and then they took the recording to a studio, with one in particular, which was run by Graham Seymour, and they would put the vocals on.
Okay.
So you could record an entire album, and obviously Billy Childish was the main character in this, and the Prisoners as well, Medway band. But there was a lot of that, like that sort of thing. How quickly can we put this together?
Yeah.
And keep it real, in the sort of, Chess Records type. It's how many takes do we need to do this track in, and that's the best take, and now let's put the vocals on, type of thing. And which again is poles apart from where we are with recording now.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't get. Well, obviously, Led Zeppelin are an example that defies this rule, but generally the recording wouldn't be such a good quality as what you could probably get technically now. We're using all this hyphenated, in speech marks, because in actual fact some of those recordings are absolutely incredible, but that concept, you could do that in such a short period of time and get the recording out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is something which I think would be, certainly the next recording I do is going to be more like that than the one that I'm still wrestling with, which is like 4 years down the line. But I think that's something that's a very, very interesting point. Oh, I don't see this has come up on the computer, which I don't understand. Oh, it's got nothing to do with it. Right. So, let's just sort of tie some of these things together. What would you say is the most important things that you have learnt? If your younger self came to see you, what would your advice be?
We're talking about life in general.
Could be, because I don't see that sometimes there's an awful lot of difference between what happens with music and what happens with life, actually.
I would
Big
say
philosophical point there. Sorry.
Well, I mean, from a life point of view, I got to 49 and I didn't like my job. My marriage communication broke down a long time ago. I was approaching my 50th birthday and was aware of my mortality.
Mm.
I thought, I need to change this. So I literally changed everything. Changed the marriage, which is, it's very difficult with my daughters, which is unfortunately unavoidable. Changed my job, and I would say go with your hearts, because my dad was in the music industry. He tried to dissuade me from going into it because the side of it he'd sing. So I'd say follow your hearts and follow your dreams, because if you have any skills that are valid, then they will find a way to show themselves. So in hindsight, I think I wish I'd spent more time following my original dream, which is what I'm doing now, for the whole of my life, rather than taking a break for a while.
Yeah.
But also, having said that, if I'd been teaching full-time or nearly full-time when I was younger, I think I might have failed, because my experience of life, bringing up children, business skills, has definitely contributed to making it what I like to consider a success it is now.
Yeah.
And I think I would have fallen short, particularly on the communication skills with customers. And as you were saying, the prima donna thing, where when you're younger, you have a defined thing. You want to do this, you're going to do it your way, to hell with everyone else. Whereas you realise in the real world, if people are paying for something, you need to provide them the service that they're happy to pay for. So that needs to come into the equation as well.
Yeah, I think in actual fact it is a communication thing, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And probably one of the most important factors in that is actually having children. Because when you see how children learn, I mean, a lot of my ideas come literally out of watching kids, you know, my own children, as well as other kids, you know, young kids, and you're teaching them how they pick things up quickly, almost without you directing it at them. In fact, it's normally better not directed at them. And then you start to realise that the system that we're using for education does almost the total opposite. Like, you know nothing, I know all that you need to know, and I'm the teacher. But of course, if you know a lot of teachers, again, this is not a reflection on teachers, but a reflection on people in general, because a lot of teachers are very young. I'm talking about school teaching. They're not necessarily the type of people that you would entrust anything to, let alone your children. You see what I mean? I mean, not saying that from a case of child protection. I'm talking about, if you know that your child is now a teacher, you think, well, when would it have been that I would have trusted them with the house?
Yeah.
Going away on holiday and realising when it comes, it's not. And you realise, in actual fact, a lot of the people that are involved in teaching early on, new teachers, they're actually that sort of point where maybe their parents wouldn't entrust them with anything.
Yeah.
And they're actually involved with teaching. So I think experience takes a long time to come.
Yes, yeah.
And you have to make a lot of mistakes to actually learn something. And you have to make those mistakes while you're doing it, while you're doing things, haven't you? Because the biggest lessons are those things you think like, oh my God, that's a disaster. You know what I mean? And that's true with, like you're talking about, deadlines in business. And there are the things that make you get your shit together, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
Because you think, oh God. And that's really, I think, probably the only thing I would say about exams. Because it's that sort of deadline thing. It's not the exam itself, it's getting all the work ready.
Yes, yeah.
I've said that for quite a long time, actually. That's not the exam, But, I've often thought that maybe, the sort of North Korean education system technique of maybe having a gun is quite useful, that people would actually stick to a deadline. No, you know what I mean? It's that sort of...
Yeah.
And it adds, a literal value to deadline.
Yeah.
But you do actually have to hold yourself to account, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's something, again, I think is sort of slightly lacking in the way that things work. It's like, we've got choices, right?
Yeah.
We have choices. We have human rights and all that, and all these things in principle are marvellous ideas. But sometimes in practice, they seem to have a strange sort of kickback that you look at and you think, how have we ended with this? And I think it's safe to say that most of the education system, we're in a place that's difficult to fix now. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this because I don't know how suitable the education system is for the world that the children who are in it are going to be faced with.
I don't know the answer to that one.
I'm pondering this.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah.
It's just, I think we need a lot more people who can think. And we haven't. We've got a lot of people who have got a load of facts.
Yes, yeah.
Which is not the same thing. Because, those facts have got us to where we are. The point that we've arrived at is by people who knew everything. But obviously they didn't.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we wouldn't be here at this point.
Yeah.
And the other, So I'm looking at this and thinking, and again, I think this ties back into an earlier point that you made about, you know. I mean, what interesting point. What guitar equipment did you have in the early days?
It was an acoustic guitar with a humbucker strapped onto the sound hole with sellotape, drilled a hole in the side, and it came straight out into a 5-pin DIN, I think, into an old record player.
Right.
The first one. Yeah.
Okay, that exactly answers what I'm sort of saying. Because now, what do you think the kids are going to have who start in a band, right?
Yeah, it's dream world, isn't it? But then again, is it too easy? So
That's what I'm getting at.
And it's when you have struggles and obstacles to overcome, you learn through the process.
That is exactly what I'm getting at. Because, you know, it's that sort of thing of, you know, this guitar doesn't really work properly unless I stick a risen papers down the back of the neck.
Yeah.
And, you know, these strings are like, well, I mean, you know, they're not really strings, they're cheese grating wire type of thing, you know, so I've got to, and that sort of thing of making do.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't got an amp, but my mate has. Is there a way we can get more than one guitar going through this one amplifier?
Yeah.
You know, or you get what I'm saying.
Or the early blues guys and the sounds they got out of dogs of instruments, really.
Well, a piece of wood with some old pickup on it, and
cigar box ones.
And you know, Coke bottle for a bridge. So the point about choice, because this is another one of my bugbears at the minute. So I've probably said this before, but I do think it's a problem. There's too much choice, and the choice has been sold for the last, God knows how many, 50 years maybe, as being the thing, the utopia. But the trouble with utopias is they're often crap when you get there. And we've ended up now with, I mean, come on, how many TV channels? You know, how many, you know, media channels? Let's put it that way. We've ended up with something which is basically full of a load of nonsense. It's just rubbish. It's not really anything that you. Okay, plenty of things that you could immerse yourself in your particular, you know, conspiracy theory or whatever you want, you know, or you're interested in, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, deep sea diving in the Mediterranean. You could spend hours just doing that. There'll be TV channels devoted just to that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever. Some sort of YouTube wormhole that you can go down. So this idea of choice has been a problem, because it looks to me now, and again in hindsight, and I say that this is probably where we've got now to a point we can't backtrack. That wasn't good, but it was always sold as good, because now people are just confused. And
that's the key. It was sold because people were making money out of it. That is why it happened.
that is the reason why the whole thing is as it is, because somebody can make some money out of it. And I mean, that's why when you look at the great inventions, and then there's often two, and then invariably the worst one is chosen. You think about it. And sometimes there's a bit of a reversal.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yes, I can. I can give you several. Betamax videos.
Yep.
Right? And what we ended up with, you know.
Yes,
okay.
Low quality.
Your VHS.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. The other one, okay, there's a film out at the moment which is apparently incredibly boring, which is, you know, AC power and DC power.
Yeah.
Right? Okay? So we chose the crap one, you know? And so it goes on. And you could probably, well, I mean, initially that's what happened with the Apple machine, and the you know, what effectively became the laptop. What do you call it? I can't think of the company name.
Microsoft.
Yeah,
Windows.
yeah. It wasn't Microsoft. It was. What was the?
IBM.
IBM. Yeah, the IBM computer. You know, the sort of thing. And of course, the IBM was the one that sort of prevailed at that point in time until, you know, Jobs got his job back.
Yeah.
Right?
But I was in the computing industry around the time when IBM was king, and the phrase going around was no one ever got sacked for buying IBM. So people knew it was a safe bet, and their job was safe.
Exactly.
Nobody took any risks on
Exactly.
better products.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And we've got now I think that's where we've got the problem with the education thing. It runs itself. It's a monster that's self-perpetuating. That's not going to change until the whole thing just falls apart. And I don't know. I can't see that because these things are unseeable, aren't they? But yeah. So I'm interested by the fact that maybe that is what there's a key there, maybe, to people becoming good at something. Is that you have, music. That maybe you have to get good at that and not everything. It's just weird coming from me because I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, right? But I think it might be that. It's the Jack White approach. It's the sort of thing, well, just get good at playing the blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't worry about anything else because that's all that matters. But in that, you end up being able to do the other stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
You see what I'm getting
Yeah.
at? And I think that...
It's the same thing we're saying about having the vehicle take someone to their objectives, and they're learning all the skills
Exactly.
that they might not realise they can use it for something else in the
Yeah.
future, but along the way...
So I'm thinking that might be something that's an interesting point. That's sort of, you've highlighted quite a few things interestingly, like you're saying about what you started with, and where you feel that you've ended up, and maybe that detour. And we all do that, don't we? We all make a detour.
Yeah.
I certainly have. Not so much with music because I've always been involved in it, but
I don't know about you, but I find I can really get into things and totally focus on it, and then it becomes too intense. I need a break, need a breather before going back to it.
yeah, I'm a little bit different to that.
Okay.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite like that because I'm more mercurial than you are.
Yeah.
So, and you're obviously aware of that. I get bored really quickly with things, or I see things. I tend to see through things a lot. You see what I mean? And somebody sort of comes up with something, you go, okay, and it's like it's sort of transparent that you can see what is good and what is not so good. That sounds a little bit critical. I don't mean it as a critique. I mean certain things stand up and go like, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
A bit. I suppose talking about the key thing I thought that stood out for me with your story, which I think that people need to sort of take away with them and sort of think about, is where you learnt your skill, right? Because that's not an obvious career choice. You see what I mean?
No, that's true. That's true.
Get involved in a church and play.
Yeah.
And just play everything. It's like, okay. Can you imagine that's not what people go, no, yeah, I'll sign up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas let's go to, BIM, or let's go to, whatever it is in London, or that sort of thing. And then, there'll be some great guitarist there who's actually not necessarily a good teacher, because that's the trouble, with a lot of the people in these colleges and stuff. They're only there because somebody's paying them to be there.
And they play well.
And they play well,
Yeah,
but that
yeah.
doesn't mean that they teach well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they don't, a lot of those people don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of exceptions to this, and I'm not saying they're all like that, because they're not, but I know you meet certain people and they're great, but they can't remember what it was like.
Yeah. I know a very good guitarist, and he says, I can't teach, just I can't articulate what I'm doing. I tell someone, he says, I've tried it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, horses for courses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And teaching, as you know, is a very different skill to be able to play well. But if you can combine them both, then you've got something good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Right. Well, I think that's a really good place to end. Have you got a website or something that people can contact you on?
Yes. Dave.Burtonshaw.com.
It's nice and simple. Yeah, that's good. I'll try and put that in the show notes as well. so that people have got a reference. But that's really good, really interesting.
Thank you, Vic.
Nice to
It's been a
speak to you,
pleasure.
as
Thank you.
always. And yeah, best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you.